Hi there, my name is Dr. Mohan MK, and we are going to answer a few questions in biology. So let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start with our first question. The diagram shows a light microscope, which labeled part supports the objective lens. Okay, so firstly, to actually answer this question, you have to deduce which one is the objective lens. So this is our objective lens right here. So the rotating nose piece is what holds the the objective lens in our case. Okay, so that's why we answered B. Question 2. Which of the following describes the similarities between a plant cell and an animal cell? Both have A, cell membrane and cell wall. So this is false. Cell wall is found in the plant cell and not the animal cell. B, cell membrane and nucleus. So this is true. They both have these organelles. C, chloroplast and vacuole. This is very limited to the plant cell. D, cytoplasm and the vacuole. Though these are in both, they're not very distinct to say, oh, these are similarities. Okay. So we go to question 3. Which of the following statements correctly defines active transport? Movement of A, molecules across a membrane along a concentration gradient using energy from ATP. B, molecules across a membrane against a concentration gradient using energy from ATP. C, solutes into and out of the cell across a membrane. D, water molecules from high concentration to low concentration across a membrane. So the correct answer is B, which is molecules across a membrane against a concentration gradient. So let's take, for instance, this is our gradient. Gradient is like a slope, okay? So when molecules are moving from one end to the next point, which is right here, this means they are going along the concentration gradient. But what they mean when they say against the concentration gradient, it's like climbing up a hill. Okay, if this is a person, it means they would actually have to use more energy to climb up there. So it's the same thing. So it's movement of this particular molecule across that membrane against the concentration gradient. And to move, you need the energy that we're referring to as ATP. Question 4. The diagram illustrates one model of enzyme action. So this is the enzyme. Like you can see, this is the enzyme substrate complex. This is the enzyme itself, and these are the products. Okay. So what model of enzyme action is being demonstrated in the diagram? Enzymes are, so A, affected by inhibitors. Like you can see here, there is no inhibitor, so this is out. B, affected by pH. If this was the case, they would have given us a scenario where this enzyme substrate complex is occurring in a particular type of pH, maybe in the stomach or the mouth where we have amylase and so on and so forth. C, affected by temperature. So in short, with this question, we can't see any external features like be it temperature, pH, or inhibitors. So this is just telling us that enzymes are specific, okay? Because there is a specific enzyme for a specific substrate. You can see how this substrate is shaped in such a way that it fits right in there, okay? This is to tell that this enzyme is actually specific, because if there's another substrate with a different shape, it's not going to be able to fit within this active site, and that particular chemical reaction will not take place. Question 5. The table shows types of food and their protein content per gram. Okay, so we have apple, beef, carrot, cheese, and milk. Which type of food would give the highest positive burette test? Okay, so before we even go further, you have to, what exactly is the burette test? Okay, so as you are asking yourself that in mind, you can go ahead and read the options. So A is apple and milk, B beef and cheese, C carrot and apple, D milk and carrot. So for the burette test, here they're simply looking for the protein content within this particular type of food. Okay, so when you look at beef, beef is full of protein, and as well as cheese. Cheese is milk that has been modified to a certain way and made actually into cheese, and it's full of protein. Okay, we go to the next question. Which of the following diseases is as a result of iodine deficiency? Okay, so what happens in iron deficiency? This, for instance, you have this person who's lacking that iron. So we know, iodine. So we know that iodine is literally made in the thyroid gland, and when you don't have this iodine, the cells in the thyroid gland hypertrophy. This is to say they actually become bigger. Hence, this is why you find goiter, where this person, let's take for instance, this is the neck region, right? Okay, so they'll have a mass right in front of their neck. Okay, because of iodine deficiency. Because as the cells are trying to stress themselves in trying to compensate for that iodine, they end up becoming larger. Okay, hence that person is going to have a goiter. So anemia, this is deficiency of iron. As for marasmus, protein deficiency. Obesity, definitely they have it's a high fat diet, so it's like too much cholesterol. 7, which is bad cholesterol, of course. The table shows the recommended amounts of 4 nutrients for 4 different people. So person A, these are the contents they have. Protein is 30. So for this one, I'll quickly run through and go to the question. So the question is, which person represents a pregnant woman? Okay. So to start with, a pregnant woman is literally eating for 2 people. So definitely all these contents are going to be high in number. Okay. She's going to need double the protein content, double the vitamin, double the iron, double the calcium. So you go for an option that where all these food supplements are increased. So the correct option is D. Question 8. Which of the following shows the effect to a plant growing in a soil that lacks calcium? A. Poor fruit formation. B. Poor root growth. C. Stunted growth. D. Yellowing of leaves. So the correct answer here is stunted growth. Okay, because what happens is that when this the soil lacks calcium, calcium helps in the growth of that particular plant. So when it's lacking, that plant is going to be stunted. The 9, the diagram shows a transverse section of a dicotyledonous leaf. So what are the numbered parts? Okay, so when you look at A, this is a typical palisades cell, like you can see. A palisade is an example of a plant cell. Okay, for instance, this is your palisade cell. Okay, you have your vacuole, nucleus, your cytoplasm around, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those are your palisade cells. Most of them are found on the apical ends of that plant. So right at the top, where the sun can easily access this leaf, this is why you find the palisade cells, because the palisade cells are full of chloroplasts, and those chloroplasts are able to trap light, and photosynthesis is able to take place. Okay, so they're found at the apical ends. So 1 is the palisade cell. 2 is the xylem right on the inside. Phloem is the one surrounding the xylem. So the answer is D. Question 10. The diagram shows the longitudinal section through a canine tooth. Okay, so this is your canine tooth. We have our enamel outside, the dentine right after, and the pulp. Within the pulp, this is where you find your nerves, right? And these nerves are able to detect heat, pressure, and so on and so forth. So when they ask for a part that detects heat, you go for the part where you find the nerves, which is C, in the pulp of the tooth. Question 11. The diagram shows a section of a human alimentary canal. Which events are correctly matched with the parts labeled F, G, and H? So F, so what happens in, so here they're trying to tell us what happens, what type of digestion occurs here. Okay, so in the mouth, you have your enzymes that are here. You have amylase. In the stomach, you have pepsin, which is it digests, it's for breakdown of proteins. Then here you have where there is a lipid uptake. So there'll be digestion of carbohydrates, digestion of proteins, and digestion of lipids. You know, right here, you have your biliary tree where you have your gallbladder, your cystic duct, and so on and so forth, leading to the pancreas where there is a release of enzymes. So these enzymes that are released help in the emulsification of fats, but then the emulsification of fats will obviously happen when those juices are poured out into the alimentary canal. Okay, so H is for the lipids. Question 12. The following equation represents respiration in living organisms. So what is substance X in the equation? Okay, so first of all, we look at our equation, which is glucose. There's an arrow. So you can see we directly went to the arrow. It means that oxygen wasn't being used in this particular reaction. So glucose, then X plus carbon dioxide plus energy. Okay, so when you look at this formula, you first have to look at what type of reaction is taking place. So it's anaerobic by virtue of it not having glucose within the chemical formula. Sorry for that. Let's just go to a fresh page. Okay, we can erase this. All right. So what we have with us here, we have our glucose. Okay, you have your X plus your CO2, which is your carbon dioxide, plus your energy. Okay, so now what you notice that this is anaerobic respiration. Okay, anaerobic respiration. Okay, so you need to ask yourself, what type of anaerobic respiration is this occurring? Is it in a man or is it in yeast? Okay, so what determines that is that the chemical equation will guide on what they are looking for. So because there is carbon dioxide and energy, X is most likely going to be ethanol because this is an alcoholic fermentation. Okay, so it's like when something let's say you have bread and it's molding, there is yeast that's being produced, so you have this glucose. Okay, there'll be ethanol, okay, which is an alcohol. Ethanol, you're going to have your carbon dioxide, you also have your energy being produced. So this is what happens in yeast. Okay, but for mankind, what you have is your glucose being produced, and in the absence of oxygen, lactic acid is produced rather, plus energy. Okay, so there's no production of carbon dioxide when it comes to man. All right, hence that's why we chose ethanol. 13. Which of the following is a causative agent for malaria? A, female mosquito. B, mycobacteria. C. Plasmodium. D. Vibrio cholerae. So the correct answer here is the Plasmodium. Okay, this is the, and when they talked about the female mosquito, they didn't even specify, because for malaria it's the Anopheles mosquito. You also have other mosquitoes. When they say female, it's a very vague option, because they didn't really even specify what type of mosquito they were talking about. So we go to 14. Which of the following is a safe sexual practice? A. Consistent and correct use of condoms. B. Having multiple sexual partners. C. Having unprotected sexual intercourse. D. Kissing and sharing contaminated body fluids. So the correct answer is consistent and correct use of condoms. Question 15. Which of the following correctly shows the functions of the solid parts of blood? So we have your erythrocytes, leukocytes, and your thrombocytes. So these are basically like chemical names of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Okay. Okay, we can get rid of this. Okay, so what we have here, your leukocytes. Okay, what are your leukocytes? So your leukocytes are simply your white blood cells. Okay, then you have your thrombocytes. So these are your thrombocytes, which are your platelets. Okay. Okay, what else? Erythrocytes. Okay, erythrocytes, which are your RBCs, or your red blood cells. So you have, what do the red blood cells do? These are like the soldiers of the body. They fight all sorts of diseases. Thrombocytes help in clotting. Okay, then erythrocytes, these are for transportation of oxygen. Okay, so these are transporting oxygen. So your erythrocytes are transporting oxygen. Your leukocytes are your defense mechanisms, the soldiers. The thrombocytes are for blood clotting. Okay, we go to the next, which the diagram shows the external structure of the human heart. So name the parts labeled X, Y, and Z. Okay, so X, firstly, before you even name, you need to know your sides. Okay, when you look at a diagram, is it on the left, is it on the right? Okay, so just at the bottom here, you have your inferior vena cava. Okay, then you look at Y. So Y is a blood vessel. So Y is a blood vessel, but what type of blood vessel were they referring to? So before we go to that, so your inferior vena cava, which is one of the biggest veins that you have, it's bringing deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body, taking it to the atrium. Okay, it's taking it to the right atrium, all the way to the right ventricle. Then that blood is pumped to the lungs. Okay, that blood is pumped to other parts of the lungs, where it's taken back to the left side of the heart, left atrium, the ventricle, then through the aorta to all parts of the body. Okay, so why is your coronary artery? Okay, this artery that's feeding into the heart. Okay, now, like we said, from the from the right ventricle here, right? Where is it going? Okay, it's going to go into the arteries. Okay, so these arteries are called pulmonary arteries. They're literally going into the lungs. So X is our inferior vena cava, Y is our coronary artery, and Z is our pulmonary artery. You may be asking yourself, why is the artery carrying deoxygenated blood? Well, this is a special case. Even if it's called an artery, it actually carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs so that that blood can get oxygenated. And the opposite is true, because the vein that's coming is the one that's bringing the oxygenated blood to the left side of the heart. 17. What is the difference between plasma and tissue fluid? Okay, so A, dissolved glucose present and no dissolved glucose. B, less dissolved glucose, more dissolved glucose. C, more protein molecules, fewer protein molecules. D, no white blood cells and white blood cells present. Okay, so plasma, firstly, before we go any further, is called the liquid component of blood. It suspends blood cells like red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and it contains water, proteins, clotting factors, antibodies, hormones, and so on and so forth. So you find that it has more protein molecules. Okay, now when you remove those protein molecules, that's why you now remain with tissue fluid. So tissue fluid has fewer protein molecules. 18. Which of the following is not an excretory product of plants? A, carbon dioxide, B, latex, C, oxygen, D, urea. So the correct answer is urea. Oh, before we actually go to this, sorry, let me just make a correction. So urea can be as a byproduct of nitrogenous from the nitrogen cycle. Okay. So when you look at excretory, it has to be something after that particular chemical reaction. It comes out as a byproduct. Okay, so we have to look at this question in two ways. Okay, so we have your carbon dioxide. Okay, so we start with carbon dioxide. Where is carbon dioxide produced? Okay, give you a minute to think about it. Okay, so when you look at carbon dioxide, is produced in photosynthesis. Okay, so as well as latex, we can see latex within from, if you've seen that whitish substance produced by plants. So oxygen is also an excretory product. All right, so urea would be most likely going to be one of our best answers because it's not a direct excretory product, but in some ways you may actually find urea being excreted, but in this case we have to go for our best answer. Okay, because when you look at urea, it will be found in one of the nitrogenous wastes, okay, of plants. All right, 19. The diagram shows part of a nephron. Which of the following is not found in the filtrate? Why? Okay, so this is your Bowman's capsule, and there is glomerulus filtration that's occurring. So what's not found in Y? It's proteins because of their molecular size. Okay, so if this is our Bowman's capsule, proteins are so big that they can't seep through there. If they do, it means that this person may have a condition, could be nephrotic syndrome, because now the Bowman's capsule has been tampered with. Okay, the membrane that filters them has been tampered with. So in this case, it's proteins. 20. Which of the following is not an endocrine gland? A, hypothalamus. B, pancreas. C, pituitary. D, thyroid. Okay, So it chose hypothalamus, not because it doesn't produce, but because it's a neuroendocrine. Okay, while these are directly linked to being endocrine glands, for the hypothalamus is a neuroendocrine, so it produces those hormones in response to neural action, unlike the other organs. 21. The diagram shows the human brain. Which of the labeled parts is responsible for coordinating all body movements? Okay, so you have your pituitary over there, you have your midbrain labeled at C, you have your cerebellum, which is responsible for balance. You also have your hemispheres, okay, at A. So for coordinating the body movements, we use the cerebellum. It's one that helps us to balance. 22. The diagram shows an eye accommodated for nearby objects. What happens to the ciliary muscle of the lens? Okay, so here we want to see an object. We want to accommodate a nearby object, right? So this is your eye. Okay, your object is here, your retina is back there. Okay, sorry for the drawing. So what happens is that for this lens to actually accommodate something closer, it has to become thicker in such a way that the refractive index is able to refract this image in such a way that it bends right there and forms at the retina, just there in front of the eye. Okay, so the ciliary, this lens is supposed to become thicker, but for it to become thicker, the ciliary muscles have to contract, and that's why they have to contract, and hence the lens can become thicker. 23. How do the biceps and triceps work in straightening the arm? Okay, so you have, for instance, okay, just a minute. Okay, so if this is your arm, okay, I'll start with the muscles. This is your muscle, this is the arm. Okay, forgive this arm. Okay, the triceps are at the back. Okay, wait, is this clear enough? Okay, let me use a different color. Okay, okay, so the bicep is this muscle right here, and the triceps is the muscle just behind. Okay, so what happens when you want to actually straighten your arm? Okay, so we've already looked at the location. So the function of the triceps is to extend the forearm. Okay, so extending means they are literally stretching that forearm at the elbow joint. So what happens is that when this bicep contracts, they work antagonistic to each other, meaning they are opposite to each other. Okay, the bicep is in charge of flexing the arm, which is bending it. So when it actually bends it, and the triceps are able to straighten the arm. Okay, so the question is asking what happens. Okay, so A is contracts, they both contract. This is force. We said antagonistic. When one contracts, the other one has to relax. B contracts, relaxes. C relaxes, relaxes. D relaxes and contracts. Okay. Okay, so the triceps muscle, when it contracts at the elbow joint, it straightens and expands the elbow, and the elbow is actually bent. Okay, so what happens that these are supposed to be opposite, because on the bicep, so let's just make a correction. So here, okay, so right here, this bicep is supposed to relax while the triceps contract. Okay, that's how this arm is going to be straightened. 24. The diagram shows a potted seedling placed under a card box with a window cut on one side so that the light reaches the shoot from one direction. What type of tropism is demonstrated in the diagram? So this plant is going towards light, so we call this positive phototropism. Okay. The diagram shows a longitudinal section of a root. Where does secondary growth occur? So secondary growth occurs from the cambium, and which part here is the cambium? So that's why we labeled, sorry for that. Let's just erase this. Okay. So the cambium is right here at C, here. Okay. 26. Okay, 26. The diagram shows a germinating seed. The seedling shown in the diagram shows. So you can see here, this seed germinates out of the soil surface. So it's epigeal germination, which occurs in a dicotyledonous type of plant. Okay, that's why I went for the answer A. 27. Which of the following is not the importance of fungi? A. Crop rotation. B. Nutrient recycling. C. Production of alcohol. D. Source of food. So we don't do crop rotation with fungi. Okay, I'm sure if you've noticed, nobody actually takes a mushroom or a mushroom plant and says they'll replant it, or because they want to do crop rotation, where you want this particular land to have different crops at different particular times so that the soil is rejuvenated. So we don't do that for fungi. 28. The diagram shows one of the artificial vegetative reproduction methods. What method of artificial propagation is shown? So you have this is your plant, and this is the stump. Okay, so you put the stump in between there. You can do this for stunted plants or when you just want to mix the two. So this is called grafting. Okay, so budding happens in yeast. This is not cutting, this is grafting, where you are putting another plant stem within another plant in order to achieve a certain crop yield. 29. The diagram shows a section of an insect pollinated flower. What structure produces pollen grains? So we know that pollen grains are produced by the anther, and here our answer is C, which is the anther. 30. The diagram shows a method of seed dispersal. So you can see these are the remains of the style, a valve of the pericarp. These are the seeds. So what type of seed dispersal is demonstrated? So this most likely is going to be, okay, let's read the options. So A is animal, B self mechanism, C water, D wind. So you can see when you look at the orientation of this plant, okay, by the time these seeds are falling, they won't fall so far off. For instance, if this is the ground down here, these seeds are just going to fall almost at the same side and they'll start growing. So this is a self-mechanism of seed dispersal. Okay, they don't require an animal to get them and go take them elsewhere after they excrete or water, but just there where they'll fall off, they'll start to grow into new plants. 31. Which of the following statements is true about reproduction in frogs? A. External fertilization occurs. B. Few eggs are laid. C. Internal fertilization occurs. D. It's asexual reproduction. So for frogs, what happens is that the female will lay the eggs and the male comes to release the sperms right outside the eggs that have been released. So it's external fertilization. 32. Which part of reproductive system in humans is cut and tied during vasectomy? A. Fallopian tube. B. Sperm duct. C. Ureter. D. Urethra. Okay, so firstly you have to ask yourself what type of a procedure is vasectomy. So vasectomy is a surgical procedure for male sterilization. So it's a permanent birth control. This person will never be able to be able to actually make a woman pregnant because it involves cutting or blocking the vas deferens. Okay, the tubes that actually carry the sperm from the testicles to the penis. So when those tubes are cut, it means that this person is going to be sterile. But then here, it's not the ureter, neither the fallopian tube is definitely wrong because it's found in females. So the spermatic cord is going to be cut off during this process. 33. The following bar graph shows different numbers of learners and their blood group in grade 12. In a grade 12 class, what type of genetic variation is shown? So you can see that they have different varying amplitudes, right? A is up to somewhere there, and so on and so forth, up to O. So the correct answer here, this is discontinuous variation because it's a presence of distinct or separate, non-overlapping. So that distinct, each one is on their own. Those with group A, blood group A, those with B, they're all separate. They're not overlapping. There's nothing like one having both A and B at the same time, or A and O, or A and AB. It's just one particular type. That's why it's called discontinuous variation. At which stage of division, cell division, does replication in DNA occur? So replication occurs in the stage called interphase. Okay, so in this stage we have what we call the G naught. Okay, let's go to this. Okay, just a minute. Okay, we might as well get another page. All right, so for instance, if this is your interphase in the cell cycle, interphase has many phases within itself. Okay, but within one of the phases, you have one particular phase where cell replication occurs. Okay, so within interphase we have what we call G2, you have your G1, your G naught, your S phase, and back to G2. Then in between, just here, you have your mitosis occurring. Okay, all right, so it's within the S phase of interphase where duplication of the DNA occurs. Hence, that's why we went for this answer. 35. What type of possible blood groups of the offsprings of parents who have blood group A and B? Okay. A, B only. B, A and B. C, A, B and AB. D, A, B, A, B, A, B and AO. Okay. So for instance, these are the parents. So one parent will either be AO, the other one will be BO. So let's take it like this. Okay, so A and B distinctively. So the children may have AB. They can have blood group A. They can have just O. They can also have blood group B. So the different variations they can have is AB, blood group A, blood group O, and blood group B. Okay, that's why I went for this particular answer. 36. The following is a food chain. So you have rape eaten by the grasshopper, grasshopper eaten by the bird eaten by the snake. Which trophic level is occupied by the grasshopper? So the grasshopper is the first one to actually eat the rape. So it's going to be called the primary consumer. Which of the following factors increases the size of a population? So the correct answer here is immigration, but with an I. Okay. So, okay, just a minute. Next page. So you see, this is immigration. Okay. So you can remember a simple mnemonic is immigration for into. So people are coming into the country, so there will be an increase of population. Then immigration. Okay, people are going out. E for exit. People are exiting the country, so the population is going to decrease. 38. The diagram shows a carbon cycle. So you have your fossils releasing carbon dioxide. You also have your animals. So you have your plants forming fossils. Fossils, carbon dioxide. Okay. And for plants eaten by animals, carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide being used by plants or being produced by plants. So the question is, what later represents combustion? So combustion is when you actually burn something, carbon dioxide is produced. So in this case, the correct answer is from the fossil fuels. It's going to produce the carbon dioxide. 39. The following diagram illustrates the formation of acid rain due to sulfur dioxide pollution in the atmosphere. Okay, so this is the flow chart that you're able to see. What measures should be put in place to prevent this type of pollution? A, deforestation. That won't help. B, global warming. Global warming will be an end result after you do this deforestation. C, soil conservation. D, using filters in chimneys. Okay, so the correct answer is D, because this is going to control the amount of sulfur dioxide that's released, because this is what's going to form that acid rain after it mixes with the water, which is the rainwater. 40. Which of the following is not an adaptive feature which enables insects to elude predators? A, compound eyes. B, larva stage. C, mouth parts. D, wings. So the larva stage doesn't protect them from predators. Okay, in this stage, you have, for instance, if this is a butterfly, this is a butterfly in its larva stage. You have, let's say these are the wings. Okay, it's within here. If there's another insect outside here, this won't protect this just because it's in the larva stage. Okay, so this is what they're trying to say. But those creatures with so many eyes, they actually help to elude different types of predators. So friends, this was the end of our biology questionnaire. Hope you enjoyed it.